Welcome to KHP 241 Basketball Coaching Fundamentals. This is week 3, and we're going to hit the fundamentals of strength and conditioning. Here I have my best friend and colleague, Brandon Stanford, here to help me out. Brandon, let's take it from here, my man.
All right. Well, first, I'm fortunate to be here, and I'm glad that I'm going to be able to, hopefully, I'll be able to help in every direction in weightlifting conditioning. Before we start anything, I recommend everybody that before they get any kind of program whatsoever, regardless, whatever sport, you need to get yourself a physical. Any kind of activity, you need to make sure you go to the doctor, get yourself a physical, make sure everything's good before you start any kind of program. From there, I think the number one thing, and before you start your program, you need to make sure you stretch good and you get your body warmed up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over a few things with weightlifting conditioning. Remember, number one is you got to have range of motion. Basically, we like to call it ROM. R-O-M, range of motion, and what that is just flexibility. And flexibility is very, very important in strength conditioning, and it's one of the aspects that will, I believe it's going to be on one of the tests and scores on there. So make a note of that. What we're going to do is kind of go over the very first thing, and it's stationary stretching. Stationary stretching is basically the beginning of any kind of stretching routine. Basically, you want to try to take about 5 minutes before and after your program to basically do stationary stretching. And what we're going to do here is Coach Potts is going to be basically the demonstrator of all the stretches, and we're not going to go over all the stretches, but we will go over one kind of go example of where we're going to go from there. Everybody knows this stretch. It's just a basic hamstring back stretch that's going to basically touch your toes, put your feet just like so. You might get a better angle if we go this direction right there. Perfect. Anyways, basically touch your toes, and which basically you're going to hold these, and you like to hold them for about 10 seconds. A lot of people, there's a misconception on stretching. You want to try to make sure there's a burn, make sure your knees are locked, make sure you're stretching that whole hamstring, that butt area, and the lower back. And you want to try to get the neck. You want to stretch as many muscles as you possibly can when you're stretching. You don't want to just stretch one particular muscle and be specific. You want to stretch as many as you can. Pop back up. Again, Coach Pottsler was about, almost about 15 seconds there. You got a good feeling. You should be able to stretch until you sweat. You should be feeling a tingle in your muscles, because if you're not stretching right. Anyway, so that's basically the stationary stretching. There's a lot of forms, there's a lot of types of stationary stretching, but that's basically what you got to know for you to be able to begin any program is stationary stretching. All right, next is we're going to call dynamic stretching. And then dynamic stretching is you're going to be moving. You're going to basically, we're going to show two types of dynamic stretching. One is going to be a basic lunge. Anyways, coach is going to stand here. He's going to do a basic lunge. What we want to do is, wherever you're at, you'd like to take about 10 steps. You can do it in place, but we like to move a little bit. Right now, I like to start off slow and gradually produce to get a little bit more advanced and faster. That's why I like to start off with the lunge. Anyways, when I lunge and I have everybody lunge, I like to do a straight up lunge. Go ahead, coach. Go ahead and do your lunge here. Do a great lunge. He's going to stick that there. He's going to see here. You're going to see the kind of knee. You really don't want that knee above that toe there. You want to kind of keep it there. You want that good. Turn around, coach. Let's do that lunge the other way where they can see that 90 degree in your leg there. Perfect, perfect. You want to see that knee's not here. It's not past the toe. You want to see right here 90 degree. You want to try to get there low enough, because in any sports that you play, you're going to make sure you're going to be doing a lot of movement, and you want to make sure your tendons and ligaments and your muscles are stretched and they're warmed up properly. And again, the focus again on stretching is just not muscles. You're stretching ligaments and your tendons, so it's very important. Again, that's your lunges. You're going to go into a little bit faster pace. I like to start out with lunges because it burns your muscles, it burns everything, kind of gets you going. The next one is just basically just a skip. You're just going to basically skip. Everybody should know how to skip. If you don't, you're going to go into a lot of movement, a lot of different variety of workouts and agilities, and it's just going to take about 15 to 25 minutes before and after your workout. So try to invest a total of 35 to 40 minutes of stretching and warming up and agilities between every workout before and after.
Coach, I had a question for you. Why is flexibility so important to an athlete?
Well, there's a variety of reasons why. I think the number one reason is because of, Coach, you want to make sure you prevent your players from getting injured. Anyways, if you stretch right and correctly, it provides a healthy player and a player that can practice and play for you instead of being on the sideline. again, I think the very beginning thing that I'd like to go over is kind of revamp on the just kind of a good squat and a good lunge. First, we're going to go over the squat, then we're going to go over lunge, and then we're going to progress it. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to progress it in a variety of ways to make it a little bit more advanced. All right, the very first thing what I like to do is on a squat is I like to bring a chair out, because I want to. A chair provides every athlete, every player, to be able to go down 90 degrees. And I want you to be able to go, I don't want to go a whole lot lower than 90. What I mean by that is because coaches go ahead and sit down in your chair, just kind of like a squat. What I like to do is I like to see, first of all, what I like to see is I don't like this knee passing that toe a whole lot. So I like my athletes to kind of be over their heels, weight on the toes, of course, but this knee, try not to pass the toe right here. And then secondly, what I like to see is I like to see the 90 degree right here. Anyway, so they don't want a lot of higher, I don't want it real low, but I do like that 90 degree right there. And that's what I provide the chair for, because sometimes it gets a little tingly, doesn't it, Coach?
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes you just got to sit on that chair a little bit, rest yourself a little bit. Anyways, it trains your body and your muscles and your tendons and ligaments to be able to do the right, correct technique. And technique is where it's at. Weight does not matter until you have the right technique. Anyway, so go ahead and stand up, Coach. So again, kind of keep it basic, keep it simple. Get that chair. Any coach, go over your players, have them sit there and show them from either a wall sit or a chair, just to guide them what you should be doing on your lunges and your squats in a proper way.
Coach,
Yes.
Question for you. Why does my knee not need to go past my toe? What's the importance of
Well,
that?
the importance of that knee not going in front of the toe is because it's real tough and hard on your ligaments and your tendons. Anyways, once your tendons and your ligaments are not built to go above that degree. So when you start getting there, you can actually start feeling it get a little bit more stressed. And you don't want stress on your tendons and ligaments. You want your muscles to build up, because they're all connected. Your muscles are connected to your tendons and ligaments, so you have to be able to stretch those, warm those up, and you don't want to be able to put too much under stress on them, because that's what's going to happen. That's why people get injured.
So does doing a proper squat prevent you from getting ACL injuries, MCL injuries, things of that nature?
Well, it's a variety. There's a variety of ways that do prevent the injury. One is stretching, but really just strengthening the muscle.
Okay.
But to strengthen the muscle in anything you do, you have to have the proper technique, and that's the reason why we try to do the basics and make sure you do the proper technique before you go into anything else more advanced. And that's why you want to make sure they're doing it right. That's why you want to make sure they're flexible. And then some of the things that we're going to do here in a minute from range of motion, ROM, it's like what we like to call it, is to see the flexibility of your athletes. Some are not as flexible as others, and then others are real flexible. But the bottom line is everybody can get more flexible. Anyways, you just got to do it right. And then every single day before and after your workouts. And a lot of people in the past that I've learned are not doing it correctly, or they're just not taking the time to stretch to work on their flexibility.
So you're saying technique is probably the most important thing when it comes to strength and conditioning?
I do believe on technique and being smart at what you're doing. A lot of people that when I go to gyms, the number one thing incorrectly is seeing him perform a lift or do something wrong and not doing it. When you can't get, if you're going somewhere, you got to be able to start it right. Anyway, so that's the thing about stretching. You want to start your program right, and I truly believe, technique and working on your flexibility is the right way to start.
Another question here, Coach. How long do you need to stretch, and do you need to stretch before and after, or just before, or what?
Well, I recommend that you stretch before and after, before your activity, anything that you do, before and after. And then also the length, it varies and kind of what you want to do from, I really like kind of doing an advanced warm-up from your stretching, from stationary and working yourself up to dynamic, before and after. I'm a big believer in doing it before and after. You get your mind and you get your body and your spirit prepared beginning and at the end when you're leaving. And that's the reason why I think it's so important. So the range probably 20-20, so a total of beginning and at the end, a total investment of working on your stretching and your dynamic, of your flexibility. I've tried 40 minutes.
Okay, so 20 minutes before practice starts and 20 minutes after practice starts.
There's not a lot time, but what I've seen is, Coach, I've seen going into practices, and I've seen, going into practices and coaches, their players never stretch.
Right.
All right, I've seen players that come in and they get tired of the routine and it gets boring after a while and they don't understand the importance of it until they get injured. Anyways, so that's why I just make them stretch for 20 minutes, set your time, set your routine, change it around a little bit before and after, and add some things to keep it fresh. But I do think 20 before and 20 after. Again, if you want to give a little bit or add a little bit, just don't not stretch. Anyways, and don't just take a boring routine, and because players get tired of that and they want to be able to stretch and keep it fresh and keep it challenging. And basically, I always say, stretch till you sweat.
Stretch till you sweat. Coach, I've seen some of my players do this, and the way they stretch during practice, they would actually, bounce and do that. Is that a good stretch?
Coach, I don't recommend it. What's called a ballistic stretching is what they call that, and it's AKA bounce and stretch. And I don't recommend it. I see it all the time. I see it people going to the gym. I see it from top programs to just people just stretching in general. And what that comes from is basically people that are trying to stretch quickly and trying to get it done with. But what I recommend is you do it the right way. You start out stationary, and then you go right to your dynamic warm-up.
So would you say that put a strain on some of the things that you're trying to...
Studies show, there's a lot of studies and theories and opinions out there, and some are correct and some are incorrect. Studies show that if you don't warm your muscles up, you'll get injured. Anyways, when you start going straight to bouncing and you start bouncing, there's a lot of muscles that you're moving there. Sometimes that studies show that it's an incorrect way of stretching, and sometimes it leads to injury.
Okay, so ballistic stretching is not good for your team.
Again, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it, and I just think it will lead to injury, and that's the opposite of what we're trying to do here.
Okay.
The next phase we're going to go into, we talked about flexibility, we talked about range of motion, and that's kind of what I really want to go into. I want to kind of go into range of motion. I'm a big believer in doing whole body movements. I'm not really into specific movements and one movement. I'm kind of doing the whole body, and that's kind of what we're going to go over today. There's a variety of ways that you can do this, and what I like to do is I start out very simple. Anyway, so basically what Coach is going to demonstrate, he's going to demonstrate just a straight up lunge, but he's going to keep his arms over his head as straight as possible, and he's going to come out just like this, Coach. There you go. He's going to do a lunge just like this, and what this is doing, again, we talked about the 90 degree, we talked about the knee not being in front of the toe there. We talked about, what I like here is because now you're getting a range of motion of your whole body. And I'm all about whole body movements because you get your whole body involved. So he's got his range of motion of his shoulders, he's got his range of his hips, his waist, his knees, and ankles. Anyways, if you take care of your ankles, your knees, your hips, and your shoulders, you're going to be okay. Anyway, so go ahead and stand up, Coach. That's basically the simple way of doing that. You can basically go up and down the gym, warm up from there. You can go front to back on a lunge. Another thing that I like to connect with that to make it a little bit more advanced is I like to connect the PVC pipe. Something simple you can pick up just at your local hardware store. Anyways, you'll go through and Coach is going to explain, and while he's demonstrating, I'm going to kind of explain here. He's going to come up a good grip here, and what you're going to do is you're going to go waist to butt. And what this is you're going to go waist to butt and go around, and at the same time, you get your range of motion of your shoulders, you kind of get your elbows involved, your wrist, everything kind of moving. Now, he's just going to hold it over his head just to kind of make it a little bit more advanced, and he's going to do a lunge. Perfect. Stand back up. Good. Anyways, he's going to do a lunge in the next foot. Excellent. Perfect. All right. Now, again, this is the PVC. You connect it. It's kind of real, nothing, kind of flimsy, so you can go through, you can go all the way front to back, get the good range of motion in your whole over body. Next, we have some bands. You can also use some bands to do the exact same thing to work on flexibility, work on some agilities and movements. We won't go over a lot of that, but I just kind of want to show you and kind of offer it to people. In addition to that, we have another band that's a little bit more advanced, and what it is, it's flexible, but it's less flexible, and you can also connect a lot of different ways of doing this too. And one of my favorite things of any player's mobility and moving is doing a good workout with this band. You can do a whole lot of things with this band right here. So one thing is the exact same thing he was just doing, grabbing it right over above his head, stretching it, and trying to get that good range. Don't have to be too strenuous with it. Go all the way back to butt to waist. Good. There you go. Just trying to keep your arms stiff, being flexible, being able to be free to move. That's what you want to do. And what I said, this is the beginning. And again, what I don't like to do is half body movements. I always like to do a whole body movement. So I always want to include some kind of movement. I don't care if it's walking, I don't care if it's lunging, but there's some kind of movement there. So do the exact same thing in a lunge, coach. Same thing, go front to back, stay in your lunge. Perfect. I'm all about doing as much as possible and less than possible. So that's basically, basically at the same time you can feel that, coach, right?
Yes.
You're still stretching, you're still working your flexibility, you're still moving, warming up your body, and it's probably going to make you sweat a little bit, right?
Oh yeah. Oh,
all right.
Yeah.
The next thing I like to do and connecting to is basically in with the range of motion, talk about the flexibility, in with that, and then we'll go into some more drills and some activities that we can go in this band. Now the next thing that we're going to go into and kind of get more into is dynamic warm-up. Anyways, what I like to do is we've been basically talking about stationary and really not moving while you stretch. Now, after you do your stationary, you want to be able to start moving and do your dynamic warm-up. So the first thing that I always like to do is you got to move. Coach is going to come in. He's going to do a basic lunge, about 10 lunges, and then he's going to come backward lunge. And I love, this is one of my favorite dynamic warm-ups, and then we'll go over probably 3 or 4 of them.
You want me to keep my hands up,
Yeah,
Coach?
yeah. Like I said, everything that I can do to add an overall body workout, I like to keep it as much as possible. Perfect, perfect. And then again, you basically go about halfway. You know, a basketball court, you go basically half court, and then you come back. You know, so it's just the coach's decision on that, or the strength and conditioning coach, whoever's that's taking care. But again, you can see on this that was probably about 10. You felt that, right, Coach? Yes. All right, that's a good little warm-up. It gets your knees, it gets your ankles, it gets your waist, it gets, basically, when you move your upper body, it gets your upper body ready too. Another addition that you can do to that is you can actually do a lot of variety of forms of movement. So again, Coach, you'll go down and then do the exact same thing, but I like to start moving the waist and the hips a little bit because that's where the core is in any athlete. So do the exact same thing, and now you'll basically this way, and you look back at me just like this. Perfect. So anything like that, I like to do all that in one motion. You know, you want to progress it slowly, show it something easy, and then but I try to do all this in one because it works out and you knock at it all. We basically use one rock, knock out a lot of use one stone to knock out a couple birds there. The next thing that I like to do is kind of get to moving. You got your lunge there, you went to dynamic, you moved your whole body, is kind of do some A skips. If you don't know what that is, coach will perform it here. A skip there and back. What this does, now it starts getting your whole body, starting jumping a little bit, you start using explosion. Whole body. Basically, what I like to say is from the bottom of your toes to the top of your head, you want to work every muscle that you possibly got. And then there's again, you want to keep it fresh. You don't want to keep the old routine all the time because sometimes players can get bored. So what you want to do is add things from time to time. You want to have a great routine, don't get me wrong. But you want to add some things and include some things just to keep it a little bit fresh so they don't get boring for people. Again, you'll do some skipping, you'll do some jogging, you'll do a lot of little Frankenstein stuff, that movements, but you want to do whole body movements to get your body ready. Well, I think one of the main things we need to really move into, the direction we need to go to, is actually the weight training. You know, I think the main thing about weight training itself is you have to have realistic goals. You got to know what your goals, what are you training for in the weight room. You got to know the difference between reality and fantasy. So have realistic goals that are short-term goals, and I believe that you need long-term goals. And I think it's very important to have those in the weight room. And then second is from there, you got to be safe in the weight room. The weight room can be very, very not safe if you're not smart. So you need to go in there and be aware of the safety in the weight room. When you go train in any weight room that you train at, you make sure that you're safe and take the proper procedures to set yourself up for success. And thirdly, I think you have to be able to perform all the lifts that you do technique, with a great technique. And again, in all the ways to do things, there's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. And if you do it the wrong way, it's going to lead you to get injured. But if you do it the right way, it's going to make you the better athlete, the better player that you want to be, and the coach wants you to be.
Coach, when getting in the weight room and things like that, I know some of my guys just want to go in there and just start off trying to max out, rep out. How would you go about doing that at the start, from the beginning?
Okay. Again, with a player, had no knowledge of the weight room itself, I would recommend that you go in and basically first get comfortable with the weight room that you're in. And then you got to know what your goals are and what you know. So you got to find out what they know, because if they go into it, they cannot go in and worry about weight at all. You got to worry about going in there, doing the proper technique of whatever lift that you do. There's a lot of varieties in the weight room that you lift, from lower body to upper body to core, a lot of agilities and all kinds of stuff that you can do in the weight room. So you got to make sure that you have a plan. I guess what I need to say. Plan, and then performing it the right way is very, very important. You've got to go into it. You're wasting your time if you go in and you try to just start pushing and moving stuff. You got to have a plan. Anything in life, I believe, and that's in the weight room too, you must have a plan. So don't step in that weight room it's just your plan. Anyways, the last thing you want to do is be playing when you go in there. You want to have a structured, detailed goal plan as soon as you step in, from as soon as you step out, and then you'll achieve success.
Okay, let's narrow it down. Let's narrow it down a little bit. For basketball players, what would you concentrate on the most?
That's a good question, and there's a lot of philosophies out there. But I think what you want to do is you really want to focus on, in basketball, first you want to focus on their flexibility, of course, what we've already talked about, their safety. But thirdly, I think you need to really focus on their endurance. I don't think you want to go in and do some super heavy weight. There's a possibility of bulking up and getting super strong.
More reps.
Yeah, I think you want more reps. Okay. I think you want to set up your sets. There's a difference between sets and reps, but you want to have perfect sets and you want to have perfect reps. And what I mean by that is however many ever sets you set up for your goal, your plan, whatever type of exercise you're going to do, you're going to make sure you do perfectly. What I mean is on a positive, on bench press, for example, you want to do a positive perfect, and when you go down, you want to go perfect. In every lift, there's a positive and there's a negative, and you want to make sure you're doing perfectly. Anyway, so yes, I think what I'm trying to answer is endurance. Getting your muscles used to a lot more reps than so-called for someone, a football player. A football player, specifically a lineman, would look for getting real strong and bulky so they can move their opponents around and be more physical than them. In basketball, I think that you want to be able to be a little bit more agile, and you want to get a little bit more endurance and kind of be more physically conditioning-wise and get involved, but basically just endurance.
Probably more side-to-side movements.
I think so. Yeah, I would agree with that statement. The game that just specifically focusing on the basketball aspect, I think that you got to go in. You got to be very agile. When you go in to be agile, you got to be able to move every which way, up, down, explosion, side to side, diagonal. You got to be able to move and all, because basketball is all it is nonstop movement. If you ever stop in basketball, you're probably not doing something right.
Now, would you recommend a player go in there by himself in the weight room, or do they need to have somebody with them, like a group? Would you ever recommend them just going in there by themselves?
Well, Coach, I tell you what, I don't. Sometimes in a perfect world, you just don't have a partner, and you just don't have access to maybe a coach all the time, or a mentor, or somebody pushing you. Now, sometimes you probably have to do it by yourself. I think sometimes you're going to have to do things by yourself. But I think the weight room, you really need to find that partner, or you need to find that instructional trainer or that coach that's going to push you to the edge. And what I mean by that is that little extra rep that you didn't push in, that you've set yourself, and you said, you know what, I'm going to go in and do 3 sets of 10. Well, I don't like, I've always don't like the 3 sets of 10 deal or whatever schedule it is, because I believe that you can get an extra negative, a half rep, or a rep in there. I always believe you can. But people limit themselves and don't push all the way. I believe if you're going to go in the weight room, you go 100%. Don't just go 50 because you're wasting your time. But I do believe that you need your partner, you need a coach pushing you, motivating you, getting you going, making you mad. and pushing.
Motivation.
Yeah, motivation. I believe it provides that motivation for you. And ultimately, what we want to do, what I always tell it, I love motivation, but motivation can sometimes be short term. I want to inspire. Inspire and inspiration can kind of last a lifetime, but also you got to motivate it for that short term too.
So, Coach, you said endurance is one of the strong points you'd like to hit. So, is that saying you want more lower body reps and things like that for basketball players?
Well, I think, I think my most important, what I always focus on first, is I focus on the core with any athlete.
You're talking about the...
Yeah, I focus around the, area right in here in the core. I think in the hips there, I call the hips and the abs, and your back, lower back, that's the core. Anyways, I think you got to focus on those, the middle part, the core is what I like to say. And then it streams down to downward. I believe that you need to focus on your endurance of your lower body, because your lower body is what's going to be carrying you around. So I'm a big believer in, and like I said, everybody has their different theories of this, but my belief is if you get your core and your lower body, everything else is going to connect. But I believe that you got to be able to train all aspects from your core to your lower body and also to your upper body. But most importantly, and physically, from your core, lower and upper, you got to be able to train the most important thing. There's two things that I believe that ultimately you got to have. And one is you got to have it up here. You got to have mental power, and you got to mentally tell yourself every single day that I'm going to work harder than that next person. Every single day. Anyways, that's what I encourage every athlete of yours or anybody is I'm going to work harder than the next guy or the next guy, because they're working hard somewhere. Anyways, and if you got a competitive edge in the weight room, that's got to make you work a little bit harder. And secondly, I think it's in the heart. Anyways, if you got that heart in the weight room, just like you got in basketball or anything in life, if you have that drive and the inner drive, that's going to push anything in your body. Anyway, so I think at the end of the day, if you got your mind right, and you got your heart into it, I think good things can happen.
How does conditioning and strength help you win ball games?
I think the number one thing about weight training and conditioning, the mental aspect of it is it gets you totally prepared, and preparation is very important. And I think a lot of people don't get to see what's happening in the back door, from practice and weight training and taking care of your body, from eating right to icing to doing all the little things that sometimes ain't just fun. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes it ain't fun to do those things. But everybody just can't come out and play game day. Everybody can't be gamers. Anyway, so you got to be able to develop your body. In today's time, today's athletes have to be able to prepare. Preparation is very, very key to going into the endurance part and the weight training and conditioning. And then when you go out and you plan all your preparation, then you go out and practice and you make it perfect, because perfect practice is very, very important to planning, preparation, and perfect practice. I think, Coach, at the end of the day, kind of recap everything that we went over. Again, I think you have to go back to the FIT principle. The FIT principle is FITT. It's frequency, intensity, time, type. And so if you can remember those four things, frequency, intensity, time, and type, and try to connect that to any of your programs, and it's called the FIT principle. I think that's really going to help any player, any coach, anybody trying to develop a weightlifting conditioning program for them and themselves. At the end of the day, I think that you want to make sure that you always want to mention, we talked about safety. One thing I wanted to really mention about safety is be careful. You got some people that really sometimes be careful with overtraining. I think overtraining is something that happens. Anyways, people want to, for instance, let's just say a basketball player, they really want to be able to jump real high and explode. Well, I think sometimes they focus on just exploding in their legs and that power, and they want to go out there and they want to train them legs every single day, all the time. And they don't want to train anything else. And I believe you got to be careful, because you can overtrain those muscles and overtrain mentally and exhaust your body. What happens, overtraining leads to injury. So I think, at the end of the day, you don't want to overtrain. But, to recap the whole segment here.
Coach, I have a question for you before we go on. Talking about time. And you know how coaches are. They love their time is very, very admirable to them. How long do you need a workout to be? You know, is there a certain? Do you need to go at least an hour and a half? Is it a 2-hour process? What would be a good time, you think?
Well, you know, that goes in right into the fit principle, Coach. You're like, first you want to figure out what your frequency is. You know, frequency is about how many. You know, and then you got to figure out.
Frequency, like reps, repetitions?
Well, it can be, but you got to figure out how many times you want to work specific. Let's just say you have a young man that wants to come in, and you want to figure out when you want to do explosion drills. So let's just say you got it for 2 to 3 days a week, and you want a good 2 days rest there. So you may want to work a kid out in explosion boxes, explosion drills, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay, well, that's your frequency of how many times you're going to do that and what workouts you're going to do. You know, intensity is your next level. You know, the higher your intensity, the shorter the duration you're going to do that activity. The lower the intensity, the longer that activity. Such as walking, you're going to walk for a longer amount of time. All right, well, if you're sprinting, it's going to be shorter. So that's a perfect example of your intensity. The next is time, and that kind of goes into your duration. Basically, it connects your intensity and time, which is just duration. And then thirdly, or the fourthly, the fifth principle is type. And it's all about what type. You know, basketball players, any other sports, football, they all have a type of program, a type of exercise that is going to get them to their success, to 100%. And anyway, so it's so difficult. You can't go over them all, but you have specific ways of doing things and specific ways of training. So, you know, at the end, it's type.
Well, basically, type is what a coach's philosophy. Say he's a pressing team, he'll want to do a lot more endurance and things of that nature. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you mean by type?
Exactly. And that's all concerning your personal trainer, your coach, or your weight trainer, whoever it is pushing you. You got to figure out what type is going to get to their destination, to the top of your level. If it's basketball or any other sport that you coach, you got to figure out what type is going to get there to make you be able to perform on the court 100%.
So, Coach, do a little recap of what we've talked about today. I believe the most important thing is warm-up. Besides technique and things of that nature, stretching for at least 20 minutes before practice starts, 20 minutes after. Then you had your frequency, your FIT principle. That was frequency, intensity, time, and type. And then you do not want ballistic stretching. See, that's the bouncing stretching you were talking about. But you want stationary and dynamic, which stationary is obviously in at one spot, and then dynamic is moving, such as the lunges and things of that nature. In your squats, you want to be 90 degree, and in your lunges, you do not want that knee in front of that toe. Okay, so you want to keep it behind there. Coach, is there anything else that I may have forgot?
Well, again, I think you covered it pretty good and recapped it well. Again, the main thing is you got to remember there's so much about weightlifting conditioning, and we can't cover it all. Or it would take there's people that have 4-year degrees in it,
Sure.
So it takes many years to become an expert at anybody's field. But what we want to do is we want to cover the 101.
Sure.
Basically, the basics of it, to be able to give people to know the basics when they leave there. So exactly, I think that you covered it there. You know, there's a lot of different, different opinions and theories out there, but the main thing is keep it simple. Keep it simple, use your common sense, and work really, really hard, and good things always happen.